Славянское радио. Добро пожаловать!
All welcome. With you, Alexei Orlov, People's Slavic Radio. And today we have a significant day on October 29th, 2017. We are launching the first teleconference dedicated to the theme, Heritage of the Ancestors, between Russia, the United States, and Germany. Members of the teleconference, Yuri and Olga Shevchenko, represent the United States, in part Russia and partly the USA, because they are Russian people who are currently living on business in the United States. Sharon McCurlin, USA. Vyacheslav Savold, Germany. Victor Maximenkov, Russia. All welcome. And we start with Yuri and Olga and those kind people whom I see here on our screen. Hello to you all. Hello. Health to you, people good, people glorious, in all parts of our Mother Midgard of the earth. Our meetings with you are always an opportunity to look at your life in a new way. And today, thanks to Alexei Orlov, the leader of the People's Slavic Radio, and his team, having united, we can start a new chronicle of life. After all, the hearts of the peoples have one language. Before the beginning of a bright case, let's say a prayer to Svarog. Svaros, bless our right work, inspire your light, so that we created for good and joy to the light of white, to the ancients and to our families. Glory to Svarog. I want to say hi others. Good evening, Sharon.
Hi. I'm very happy to be with you.
Sharon, you have the opportunity before the beginning of the teleconference to address your wishes, not only the Americans, not only the Russian people, not only the Germanic peoples, but also all the peoples of the world.
I'll try. We are a group of mostly women and a few men working for unity in the world. We work in a spiritual way, and we work with something that's called the net of light or cosmic web, the largest construct in the universe that connects all life, humans, animal, plant, mineral, everything. We have groups of people meeting all around the world, anchoring this net of light wherever they are, praying, meditating, working for the highest good of all concerned. And we work primarily with a group called the Great Council of the Grandmothers, which are representative of all races and all cultures. We also work a lot with the ancestors of the light.
Thank you. Very good message. What do we have with the connection with Vyacheslav? Vyacheslav, do you hear us? Yes, I see and hear you, but I need a few minutes for you to see me. Good, thank you. Then the word for greetings we transfer to Victor Maximenkov. I, Alexei, and everyone present at this conference. I would like to see more such conferences. Because we are artificially separated, I want us to unite because good people should be together. Victor, thank you. And so start our conference. And we transfer the microphone to the studio of Yuri and Olga. Good, bright time for all the people of the earth. I want to introduce your group. These are magicians because some of us are already far from 45 years old. Richard Bach has a wonderful saying: if you see a person in front of you who does something extraordinary and you do not know how he does it, then he's a magician. And these people who before you went up to the glaciers of Mount Shasta, then they went down and swam in the glacial lake. They took contrasting thermal mineral springs, and then they told us to see how the sun sets in. Therefore, all these people have their own experience. And today, they will briefly share their experience, because we want to be sane people. And sanity has 3 criteria: ancient writings of our ancestors, our own experience, the opinion of competent people. And if all 3 criteria resonate with our heart, then we are on the right way. And today, our theme is Heritage of the Ancestors. So, let me express my gratitude from our group from New York to People's Slavic Radio, leading Alexei Orlov and his wonderful team for a wise decision to hold this teleconference, because our consciousness was long separated and it's time to unite. And we're gathered today by a small team because in the ancient scripture it says, "What only in the works created by the community you will cover your clans with glory." And we will assume that we are gathered today by a small community. So, the great legacy of our ancestors. You see, on an ancient map, the continent is the Great Dari. And those people who have a huge inner spiritual power, and it awakens, this ancestral land has long beckoned and called. We are all interested in the motherland, ancestral home of humanity, the Great Dari. The search for truth, the revival of tradition, which in the distant past united all the people of Midgard of the earth. Valery Uvarov, in his book Pyramid, is well told about this. The Great Dari was long lost on the history map, becoming an unattainable dream of researchers and travelers. In the Russian epics, the Indian Rig Veda, the Tibetan chronicles, in the Germanic epic and Celtic mythology, the ancient northern land where the Golden Age reigned is described. People inhabited that earth since ancient times, the glorious people, children of the gods. People who have a genetic relationship with them carry a special spiritual force, which is similar to the legendary bird phoenix. Once reborn, will play a saving role in the fate of the world. And those who feel this call in themselves are looking for the legendary Dari. The enchanted power seizes the seekers of the ancient cradle of mankind. It's as if you're trying to find the earth where your childhood passed, where your ancestors set foot. The opening of Dari is not only the key to people's awareness of their spiritual kinship, it is a step towards a great reunification after thousands of years of disunity. The ancient scripture says, "The river of time will again bring changes in its flow, and again the unification of the clans of the great race begins. They will unite the ancient wisdom preserved in the hymns and legends of the people, transmitted from mouth to mouth and recorded on the stones in the shrines and sanctuaries. Therefore, we visit the former temples and sanctuaries of our ancestors, the places of power. Let's do our expedition across by North America, and we will draw conclusions based on the material that will open to us. We know that space has memory at the field level, and each of us is genetically related to our distant ancestors and the ancestral home of humanity, the Great Dari. Left only the external form. Everywhere the earth, ancient artifacts are scattered, bits of knowledge and great wisdom that today hold the network of light, the new grid of the consciousness of the earth. But in ancient writings it is said, the knowledge of ancient wisdom is given only to those who open their hearts, who are attracted by the soul and their spirit to touch the ancient faith of the first ancestors and find your roots. So, I suggest let's open our hearts and unite, because such information can be accepted only in open heart. And we begin to write our chronicle, but already united consciousness, and it will be fine. Our studies of the blessed places began in Russia, in Siberia, in the Krasnodar territory. We have always been struck by the similarity of megalithic complexes. And when we were on the American continent, were surprised by the similarity of the megaliths, mengers, sades, cromlechs, mounds, dolmens, labyrinths. One plan of great architects was embodied on the whole earth. There was a question for what megalithic complexes were created by our ancestors all over the earth. For the opportunity to create a space of love in which everyone will be comfortable and easy. Today, like-minded people gathered before the ether. I thought about how beautifully the world is arranged. After all, literally every new day opens new opportunities for people. The opportunity to get out of old programs and fill every moment with a good sense. Let us also fill this time, which we will hold together, with light, wisdom, love. It is important for the future of our common home, our earth. More than once asked themselves the question, why were these natural temples built in which ancient wisdom is stored? The call makes you answer. The information came. Trunvlo Melchizedek, in the book The Birth of the New Mankind, says that 83,000 natural objects were created all over the earth. Karl Monk has a book called Code. There it is said, our ancestors knew that the earth would enter the dark sleeve of the galaxy and we would lose knowledge and wisdom. Time was like that. But when the day of Svarog begins, we will be able to find the lost potential, because in the places of power, this wisdom is stored. Places of power talk with us in the language of light. When we perform rituals, meditate, use practices from the northern traditions, we see many phenomena, from various glows to the appearance of rainbows, eagles, other signs in the sky. The universe responds. When we take at least one step to meet the universe, it flies to help us. What is interesting and rich in the American continent? Energetically, the American continent and Siberia are very similar, so says my heart. At the genetic level, in the field, we are connected with our ancestors, connected with a distant ancestral home of all people with a great diary. Its external form has left, but the connection has been preserved. In preparation for this transfer, new facts have opened. We look at the old material, but always attracts new. It is always interesting to approach the mystery. Unknown things were discovered to us. In New England, in Massachusetts, a very interesting figure was discovered on the rock. Prince Sinclair and amateur archaeologist Frank Glynn. A figure of 6 feet high. One hand rested on the hilt of the sword, in the other he held a shield with a coat of arms. The British experts established that the coat of arms belonged to the Sinclair from Scotland. The figure of the knight is authentic. The prince lived on the island of Friesland, which today disappeared from the face of the earth. The question is why this figure was discovered on the American continent, and what kind of a prince is this? It is assumed that the islands, Iceland, Greenland, Ireland, and those that disappeared from the face of the earth, Estalitland, Grockland, Anian, the names are close to our ears. They existed in the distant past. These islands were connected with the American continent. It was one people, one country, in the 14th century. This is interesting about Alexander Koltypin. The Hyperboreans migrated to these islands before the flood. The tribe of the goddess Danu lived. It was people, gods, when the flood broke out. The tribe of the goddess Danu was saved miraculously. All the islands, Greenland, Iceland, Ireland, and others, and the eastern part of the American continent were once one country. Today, Americans say, until now, us are assured that Columbus discovered America. Columbus on this continent was the last Johnny. People are awakened, we begin to understand something. Why was it depicted on the rock? Exactly, Prince Sinclair. The technology of the image is interesting. Scientists cannot understand it. Let us recall the plasticine theory. First, the stone is softened and then create the image. This method was used. Today, these technologies are inaccessible to us. Life on the islands was described in Ramsay's book, Discoveries That Never Was. The photo depicts a chapel in Scotland near Edinburgh. This chapel also shows the coat of arms of Prince Sinclair. Very beautiful interior. Depicts plants that grow on the American continent. Question: where did the Scottish carvers know what is growing on American continent? There are many questions, some already have answers. There is an ancient map of the island of Estalitland. It is no longer today. About this island tells the traveler Nicholas Zen, who lived in the 14th century. About him tells Ramsay in his book Discoveries That Were Not. The inhabitants of the island were obviously immigrants from Europe. They masterfully owned crafts, they had a big city, many books, gold. They traded with Greenland, buying furs and tar. From it, growing grain and cooking the drink that the northern people drink the way we drink wine. It was a civilized people who lived on an unknown land. The language of these people was unfamiliar to the sailors, but they spoke with them in Latin. This island was smaller than other islands. Today it disappeared. This name was transferred to the eastern coast of North America. Namely, Prince Sinclair met the sailors on this island. Why is Prince Sinclair depicted on a rock? Prince Sinclair and the medieval knights had a very important mission they were to deliver. The Grail, the Hyperborea symbol, later transferred to other traditions to the island of Oak Island, which was not far from Scotland. They decided that she might be found there. And Sinclair, with the knights, went to American continent in the territory state of Massachusetts. It was there that they kept the Grail. Americans know about this and ask, is this cup found? We need to open it in yourself. There was another interesting country city on the east coast with the name of Nuremberg. There in the 16th century travelers visited, they told. It's a wonderful country, the streets are wider than London's and there lives an amazing people who wear fur. There are a lot of gold and silver in this country. They are very hospitable, welcome. When we hear this information, the magic string in us begins to sound. The generic memory opens. The Vedas say that many wise knowledge will be lost to the ancient race of the great race, but they will remember that they are the descendants of the heavenly family, and no one can defeat and deprive them of their freedom. Therefore, the descendants of the heavenly sort, by hearing the call of heart, seek their ancestral home, the great Dari. Let's answer ourselves to the question: who dresses in sable fur, knows the crafts well, trades in fur, who is generous with soul, has many books, speaks an incomprehensible language? And what kind of pronunciation language is similar to ancient Latin? Fomenko and Nozovsky have a book called The Russian Roots of Ancient Latin. There are enough facts, is not it? We have drawn such conclusions that the islands near the Atlantic coast of America and the northeast coast of America, it was one country, one people. There lived people from Hyperborea, Greek name, or from Daria, who moved there before the flood. As A. Koltypin writes, on the screen you see a book by Raymond Ramsey, which is called Discoveries Which Never Was. As the author says that in his book there is a lot of information that scientists do not have. To date, the Vatican, the governments of Spain and England, keep a large amount of material in secret, including ancient maps that remain inaccessible. In the 13th to 15th centuries, from all parts of the world, only Europe was adequately studied. Asia seemed strongly flattened. Its right edge disappeared completely into the unknown, in the east. America was more known for the eastern coast, which the Europeans landed on and began to settle. Of the two Americas, only the south was sufficiently known, mastered by the Spaniards and the Portuguese. Britain had an interest in South America, but for some reason did not go to this continent. There were navigators, there were navigational maps. In 1959, a sensational discovery happened. A map of the Turkish Admiral Piri Reis, compiled in 1513 in Constantinople, fell into the hands of the history professor Charles Hapgood. It depicts part of South America and the coast of West Antarctica, connected by an isthmus. The sensation was that on the map the Antarctic coast was free of ice. This is a documentary fact. So the map was compiled by the seafarers before the last glaciation. Ancient sea charts are an area where accurate information is very important for all peoples. They were transferred from the people to the people, from generation to the generation. It turns out that there are maps that go to the sources of unknown civilizations. We know that there was the Alexandria Library, in which unique materials were collected. They were copied and worked with them by geographers, cartographers of that time. Before the catastrophe that destroyed the Library of Alexandria, many of the maps mentioned must have been transported to other places, mainly in Constantinople, which until the Middle Ages remained a kind of scientific center. which in the beginning of the 16th century was captured by the Ottoman Empire, and the Turks became own all these treasures. How this card fell into the hands of the Turkish admiral. Charles Hapgood studied ancient maps for 30 years, wrote a book, Maps of Ancient Sea Kings. Hapgood writes that more than 10,000 years before the era of the last glaciation, there was a developed culture of navigation, thanks to which the whole world was explored and mapped. For a long time, the northeastern part of America was designated as terra incognita, an unknown land. The western part of North America was marked very conditionally, or it was not drawn at all. Considering that America is the continuation of Asia. Conclusion: ancient civilization owned tremendous technologies. Today we do not have such technologies. But why was that? Why terra incognito? Yes, because the entire northwestern part of America belonged to the Great Tartary. Great Tartary, Russia, Daria, Scythia. These are all traces of the ancient civilization of the Rus at Midgard-earth. This is the great heritage of our ancestors. The British Encyclopedia says that in 1771, the Greatest Tartary was the greatest empire on earth. She owned not only the land in Eurasia, but also in North America. All other countries were half as large. Almost until the end of the 18th century, the Great Tartary was inaccessible to Europeans. At the end of the 18th century, the stormy conquest of the lands of Great Tartary began. It came at once from two sides, from the west and from the east. From the east to Siberia and the Far East. For the first time the troops of the Romanovs entered, and the western part of America, stretching right up to California, for the first time included regular troops of the newly formed state of the USA, to California itself. The redistribution of the world began. The great empire disappeared from the maps of the earth. This huge and large-scale war was then falsely presented under the guise of suppressing the Pugachev Rebellion of 1773 to 1775. In America, like the War of Independence, the United States from Britain in 1775 to 1783. Conclusion: to hide the facts and rewrite the history of Catherine II, issued a decree that all facts and all events of this war be devoted to eternal oblivion and silence. After this grandiose war, the American continent emerges for 2 to 3 years in the city. Chicago, Washington, Pittsburgh, the largest industrial centers, and in Russia 144 cities. A grandiose experiment was completed and the story was rewritten by the winners. Cities of the East Coast. We spoke with you about the places of power, and now we will talk about the cities. This is also very important. Everything is obvious, but when you do not go deep into the topic, understanding that happens. No. Please look, these are photographs from engravings, drawings of cities of 1650 to 1800, and what we see. This is the island of Manhattan, New York. This photo is 1,650 years old. We were told about Manhattan of those times: bogs, impenetrable forests, and what we see? We see the city, question, who built these cities? Remember, as they say in the Vedas, our ancestors will disperse on all the edges of Midgard earth, and will build new grads and shrines. There is another story about New York. Legends of Sadko. This city was called Novoslavensk. One of the expeditions Sadko crossed the Atlantic and explored the coast of North America, where they founded the city of Novoslavensk, which was in place of the current Manhattan. And there, where in ancient times there was a blessed place, the Temple of Triglav. In our time, twin towers of the WTC were built. The story of an American about interacting with this blissful place. The great spirit of the ancient power seed became our informant. He said that this construction was a violation of all rules. It was the ancient temple. But over the next few years, this place was captured by relatively few people for selfish purposes. And the spirit of the place did not want this. Yes, this is a mystical story, but it also had a continuation, but not in linear time. At the same time, amazing things happen. Brooklyn, Brighton Beach. On the megaliths you see the faces of the Slavic gods. Valery Alexievich Chudinov deciphered them. They are exactly the same in California. Where did the fragments of the megaliths with the gods of gods appear? On Brighton Beach, not from the lighted seats, which were destroyed. The time has come, the truth opens, people see and feel. Let's look at other cities: Boston, Baltimore, Philadelphia. The middle of the end of the 17th century, and cities already exist. These cities lie on ley line from Boston to Washington. Our ancestors saw these lines, and on this principle chose places for the construction of cities. We know that energy is on them. It is neutral, but it can be used for all kinds of intentions. With this energy, human consciousness can control. They can be charged with their love, and it is possible through them to manipulate our consciousness. On such lines, cities were built so that people evolved. It was in the golden age. And then there was a paradigm shift. We are easy to manage. If these lines in major cities are sacred objects and some information is laid, Americans are good fellows. There are many articles that say that a person has an inner strength to decode these lines. Long Island. There is a nuclear collider on it. Every sane person understands what it is meant for. We are in such places and decode the energy of these places with our love. We must believe in the power of love. The new grid of Earth consciousness is activated. It can be done only by love. The great wisdom of ancestors sleeps in our genes. We just need to remember, faith in our affairs works wonders. Conclusion: the ancient names of cities and countries were erased, and a story was written that today awakened people can dispel and write their new chronicle. We must believe in yourselves. The Vedas says belief in the success of your glorious acts is what is most important at this time. If the deeds are sealed by faith, what will prevent the acts from happening? And we are moving to the Midwest. The Middle West and Southwest are more flat parts. When the first settlers came to these places, they were amazed by the abundance of mounds that occupied the territory of the present 12 states. There were more than 100,000 of them. One of them is Spiro Mound, Oklahoma. Anthropologist Forrest Clementi writes that he experienced a strong shock when he learned that in 1935, the largest U.S. archaeological monument, all was dug in tunnels. Devastated, all relics, beads, bowls, goblets, shells were taken out by wheelbarrows. And these were the most beautiful relics of pre-Columbian America. Account books contain such records of transactions: beads from shells 1,200 pounds, beads from pearls 2 gallons. The description of the stolen in Spiro is only a tiny part of the ancient heritage of the highly developed civilization. Mountains occupied half of the continent. The main were the pyramids with flat peaks, the height of 5 to 18 meters. At the top there were temples, houses, Mount Cahokia in Illinois, one of the main temple mounds. Ceremonies were held in such places. They were widely distributed, and the people who created them are called great architects. These hills usually reached a height of 5 to 18 meters. Temples and houses were built on tops. Some mounds were built close to each other and served as ceremonial centers. Such ceremonies gathered residents of the whole region, helping them to feel their oneness. The supreme ruler wore the title of the Great Sun. He was considered a living deity and, according to myths, was a descendant of the sun. He lived on top of Mount, and, as the Indians say, sometimes in the pre-sunset hours around the mountains you can hear unearthly singing. Once an archaeologist, Cornelius, asked the leader of the Indians whether there were any mention of such structures in the tradition of his people. He replied that they were not built by our people. The reconstruction of a large city, which was in Illinois, is shown. The scientists were surprised that the mountains were constructed with mathematical precision of geometric figure. Megaliths. Imagination amazed with figured mounds. This is the mound of a giant snake that swallows an egg. Its length is 400 meters. It is in Ohio. This is one of the amazing figure mounds. And the great mountains today cast their shadow on a turbulent life. And large circles of red cedar pillars, solar calendars, keep track of the movement of the sun. And they tell us that our ancestors transferred to us, in these buildings, the great wisdom, the great knowledge. Karl Monk, in his book Code, claims that the world collection of blessed objects throughout the earth was created in order to pass on to subsequent generations. That is, to us, representatives of the ancient civilization of knowledge, for the evolution of our consciousness, health and beauty. Today we find the ancient maps and see that Asia and the west of North America were a single large territory, and South America was a small island compared to this territory. These are pyramids, mounds located on different continents. which hold the network of the new consciousness of the Earth. We need it for evolution, so that we can remember who we really are and have found our roots. This is the network of the new consciousness. The Earth has three networks. First, a network of Aboriginal peoples. Second, a technocratic matrix, when we play our roles in society. Without the network, a person cannot exist on the planet. Third, network of New Earth consciousness, or the light network. We must be associated with it. It will allow our united consciousness to step into the golden age. Southwest, we had very interesting meetings with the Indians. They told us many interesting things. 4 states of the Southwest: New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado. There was a feeling that there was a nuclear war there. Many megalithic complexes have many burned stone structures. It strikes the Arizona with its unprecedented combination of the natural zones, the desert, the wonderful forest, the incomprehensible origin of the stone forest. Obviously, there was a serious damage to the earth. The inhabitants of these lands, the Hopi Indians, Pueblo, Zuni, together with the Maya, are one tribe. They remember and are waiting for the white gods. In those places there are a lot of petroglyphs, like petroglyphs preserved all over the world. They say that there are portals to other dimensions. The Indians know about the space keepers. They have always been part of our story, says Mahuti, Zuni's representative. Petroglyphs talk about flying saucers. We knew about aliens for a long time. When people raw came to us, or star people, we were then in the development stage, and they taught us. They came as teachers. They taught us how to take care of themselves, about the earth and all other creatures, as well as various natural technologies. Our shamans still communicate with the sun people in special places. On the days of the equinox, the solstices open the portals, and the people of the inner earth and the people of Ra come to meet with the shamans and priests. Some people who meditate in such places see how these portals open. People see the surface of the rock, and then suddenly a passage opens in it. It's all there. Zuni has a prophecy that the earth is now passing through healing. We have the freedom to go back and fix everything. But this must be done by everyone. Everyone must invest their heart. Man is part of the whole system. As the Indians say, we are all woven into the net of life. And if we do badly this net, we do badly to all the rest of the people of the earth. We thank once again the People's Slavic Radio for the wise and courageous decision to hold this teleconference. We collect knowledge bit by bit, and when people on different continents gather the bits of this knowledge together, we can see the holistic image of the future, and the truth will again shine in its beauty and purity. This is written by Nicholas Roerich in his book, The Power of Light. Petroglyphs created thousands of years ago are enthralled by unsolved mystery, common themes, similar stylization and knockout technique. The hearts of peoples have one language, conclusions, which came Rarick gave confidence in the onset of the golden age of unity, which was not conceived without the flowering of the once laid universal foundations of art and culture. These inscriptions unite the long disunited consciousness of peoples. The same inscriptions in Arizona, Mongolia, Siberia, on the rocks of Tibet and on the stones of the Caucasus, Hungary and Norway. They unite consciousness, and should be especially valuable now that we are moving so fast into the golden age. The Vedas say, only in the works created by the community you will cover your claims with glory. Only by rallying all the faiths together with ancient faith you will stand. Your Midgard beautiful, the ancient connections will be restored, and the ancestors will respond to the calls of descendants. I want to clap as if I attended a professional lecture by historians.